Welcome to the Pulse with Peter B. I'm your host, Peter Biancamano. Let's get you to the pulse on everything you need to know. And today's show is brought to you by the Pilsner House and Beer Garden. Go visit our friends at 1422 Grand Street. Have a pretzel, have that great watermelon salad, have a beer, as they say, and have an absolute great time because it is an awesome atmosphere. Joining us today is another guy who's pretty awesome, and he hasn't been on the show in a while, but there's been a lot of news happening in the pro wrestling world, and that is our pro wrestling insider, Mr. Rob Tonnesen. Great to see you again. How are you?
It is a pleasure to be back. I must say, that was quite the commercial you just ran there. I think if this fails, you do have a future in advertising.
I appreciate that. And do you think the sponsor would be happy?
I think Hoboken, I'm starting to like Hoboken a little bit better now. So.
All right. I like that. Let's talk about the shirt. Bret the Hitman Hart, my favorite wrestler of all time, along with The Undertaker. Why the Bret Hart shirt today?
Bret Hart is never wrong.
Why is that?
Never wrong. Everything he has ever said about people has ended up coming true. I'm sure we'll get to that in a few minutes during our little segment. But you always gotta. I always say, who's better, Bret or Shawn? I just always go, does anybody else have a hockey team named after them?
Very true. Very, very true. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever
will be.
That's correct. All right, moving on. Rob, you joined us at the end of last year, and we spoke about the best and worst in pro wrestling, specifically the WWE and the AEW. And we'll probably get to little independence later on in the show, in the segment, I should say. Now, we're about halfway through 2022, a little over halfway through 2022. Why don't we do that for the first half of 2022? And let's start with the E, the WWE, best and worst moments. And let's start out with an event that caused a lot of controversy. Sasha Banks and Naomi basically walking out of the business.
Yes, and this is where I do have to give Sasha Banks and Naomi all the credit in the world. Sasha Banks and Naomi were the women's tag team champions, and they had a problem with their creative, and they went to go complain or just say, hey, I want to talk about my position, my role, my everything like that. They essentially got brushed aside and told, this is not a good place for you. Don't rock the boat. And once that happened, they basically placed the tag titles on the desk of Vince McMahon and walked out.
Was it Vince McMahon? I thought it was John Laurinaitis.
Vince or John, whoever was there. Right. But they walked out. They have not been seen since. If you go on Peacock, you cannot find Sasha Banks, Naomi anywhere. Their merchandise is nowhere on the shop.
Also, their matches are no longer on the...
They're there, but you have to know where to look.
Interesting. So you can't Google or search their names.
Exactly.
But let's say I'm watching WrestleMania from last year and they both performed, they would still be on the show.
Exactly.
Very, very interesting. Okay, very, very interesting. Let's move on to something that's a little more recent. Vince McMahon. Vincent Kennedy McMahon. He has been in the news a lot lately.
Yes.
Regarding his sexual exploits and the millions of dollars that he's giving women to either sign NDAs or basically hush money, as they say.
Yes.
He pretty much stepped down as chairman of the WWE. Did he really, though?
No.
I didn't think so.
No. If he stepped down as CEO and he put anyone else in charge, I would say, okay, Vince is not leading everything. But since he put Stephanie in charge, and Stephanie is now the interim CEO, nothing against Stephanie McMahon-Levesque, but she is going to report to Vince about everything. For anybody out there, if you've ever seen the show Succession, Vince McMahon...
Fantastic show.
Oh, wonderful show. Best show on television right now.
I agree.
Vince McMahon and his entire family are run exactly like Logan Roy and family.
That is
so until someone that does not have the last name of McMahon as CEO, Vince will still be in charge. And it's sad.
And I have to just do a quick correction. It is the best show on TV besides The Pulse with Peter Ray.
Correct.
Yes.
The best show that's not streaming.
There you go.
You're not streaming.
Oh no, I'm on TV as well. You should know this by now.
I know, but you're not on a streaming app. Let's get back on track.
Anyway, alrighty. So, but I just want to finish off with Vince McMahon. A few weeks after, maybe the week after, he came out on a live edition of Raw and a live edition of SmackDown, basically trotting to the ring, waving his arms. We'll put a video up just to piss our production assistant Chris off because he has to go find his video. and basically was like rubbing it in the face of these women that he had, and a lot of them were consensual. Let's be honest, you know what I'm saying? But rubbing it in the face. But that's McMahon to a T.
It is, but basically that's what I'm saying. If Vince is not in charge, the company will not move forward.
Gotcha. Interesting. All right, let's move on to AEW.
Yes.
And let's start out with MJF.
Yes.
Talk to me.
Maxwell Jacob Friedman is sort of along the lines of what happened with Sasha and Naomi. Basically, when Max signed, when AEW was first around, he kind of signed a low-end deal. Now AEW is making money. AEW is successful. AEW is profitable. Max is kind of turning around and saying, well, I want to see my money too. And they're not giving him the money he should. They're kind of reverting to, well, we'll renegotiate, and his renegotiation is next year, and he could very well go to Vince.
Wow. I was going to say, and it happened to the person I'm going to bring up next, which of course is Cody Rhodes.
Yes.
Best and worst. That was probably a very, very great moment for the WWE and a bad moment for AEW.
I disagree.
Okay,
I
fine.
disagree. I don't think it was a bad moment for AEW because I think Cody reached his performance. I mean, if you want to say that this was Cody's goal to always go back to WWE, fine. God bless him. But as far as Cody showing up, it's a great move. It's a great move for him. It's a very personal move for him. But when you look at the worst, look at his injury from Hell in a Cell. His injury from Hell in a Cell was gruesome. He had no business being on competing that night.
Very, very interesting. Now let's talk about Forbidden Door. Best or worst of the first half of 2022?
Forbidden Door was great. Door was great. The idea that Tony Khan was able to get Japanese superstars, Kazuchika Okada, Jay White, even Shingo Takagi, all these different former IWGP heavyweight champions coming to America and having dream matches. I would have never guessed in 2022 I would see Shingo Takagi team with Sting.
Interesting.
How
old is Sting now?
Sting is 62, and if you watch some of the stuff he's doing right now, he is jumping off the highest balcony he can find right now.
Wow. And how old is Ric Flair?
Ric Flair is 75, and he's having his last match on July 31st.
What he says is his last match, right?
Yeah, until he needs more money.
Exactly. All right. Very, very quickly, we have about 90 seconds left in the segment here, Rob. Let's talk about the rise of the independents.
Yes.
I know that you're a very, very big fan of the independent wrestling scene. Do you think the first half of 2022 has been positive or negative for you?
It is. The rise of the independents has been so much fun between GCW, JCW, Garden State Pro, which is starting up in New Jersey. New Jersey is becoming a very big hotbed of independent wrestling. And then you have the West Coast, Defy, PWG, all these different people coming in. You have inclusion. You have now trans wrestlers wrestling and getting more exposure. You have intergender matches. You have a lot of people going the extra mile. And then you've had Kanzuke Takeshi, who came over from Japan on excursion, and just every match he does, whether it's on AEW or in front of 100 people in New Jersey, he's tearing the house down.
Oh, so AEW takes wrestlers who can also wrestle on the independent scene?
Correct.
But the WWE does not do that.
No.
All right, Rob, really, really quickly, 10 seconds. What are you looking forward to as 2022 winds down in the professional wrestling world?
I'm looking forward to Bayley coming back.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to more exposure to the under guys. In WWE, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. In AEW, guys like Wardlow, guys like Darby Allin, people like that getting more exposure and taking that next step.
Awesome. Well, Rob Tonnesen is actually going to be back next week for a SummerSlam preview, because that is the E's biggest, probably the biggest pay-per-view of the summer.
Biggest party of the summer.
Biggest party of the summer, that is. So you're not going to want to miss him. He'll be back next week, but we have to let you go for today. Thanks for coming by, my man.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. All right, folks, we will be right back.
Welcome to Hudson River Care Counseling. Hello, I'm Dr. Pam Pater-Ennis, the CEO and founder of Hudson River Care Counseling with over 30 years of clinical social work experience in therapy. We are a progressive counseling and coaching practice with a diverse team that brings a holistic approach to clients. We offer support both in person and through digital platforms such as telehealth. Consider us a safe haven that you can trust with care for your mental health needs. Visit our website to set up a consultation today.
Peter Biancamano, your hostess with the mostest of the Pulse with Peter B. Folks, don't forget to go on our Facebook and our Instagram pages by searching The Pulse with Peter B, and like and follow us on each of those platforms. We're constantly updating those pages with previews of each week's segments and cool stories. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our email address at thepulsewithpeterb@gmail.com. Welcome back to The Pulse with Peter B. I'm your host, Peter Biancamano, and we are here for the third month in a row. I might have to start paying rent here, and that is at Hudson River Care and Counseling. And the person to my right needs absolutely no introduction because she was on the show 2 months ago, and of course you see her in all of our commercials as well, and that is the founder and CEO here at Hudson River Care and Counseling, by the way, located at 310 Cedar Lane in Teaneck, New Jersey, and 63A 8th Street in Hoboken.
That's a mouthful.
Exactly. And that is Dr. Pam Pater-Ennis. Dr. Pam, great to see you again.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, the last time you were on, Dr. Pam, we discussed basically an overview of what services you provide. Now we kind of want to zoom in to the specific services, and we're going to begin with trauma.
Okay.
So when you talk about the trauma services that Hudson River Care and Counseling provides, what are the types of things that you do provide?
Would it be helpful, Peter, if I just kind of explain what trauma is? Because I think it's become a really almost an overused word. Trauma is really the result of horrific situations that have happened to people, whether it be sexual abuse, physical abuse, childhood sexual abuse, adult domestic violence. Well, domestic violence can happen in a household at any age, I guess. Even emotional abuse, which is harder to pin down, but it's certainly very real. And then there's a subset, I think, of religious or spiritual abuse, which I'm not going to touch on today. I think we're going to do that in a later segment to be aired maybe into the fall. But today I want to so trauma really is a very, if you will, normal human response to horrific circumstances. So what happens is that people, adults, women, children, can have different symptoms and things you probably hear about in the media. They may develop post-traumatic stress disorder, which would mean that they're having hypervigilance, nightmares, either insomnia or hypersomnia. They may develop comorbidities of eating disorders or self-harm, where they cut themselves or burn themselves, scratch themselves, all kinds of things like that. Or gosh, what else? Or they could develop more severe things like dissociative disorders, where people, like I always say, I'm spacey, so I can drive by like an exit on the turnpike and not even know I did it till a couple miles later. But that we all do that. But it's a continuum, and the more extreme forms of disassociation are really, like an extreme form would be like dissociative identity disorder, where what used to be called multiple personality disorder, and we do work with that here, where people really have been so traumatized as children, usually through severe sexual abuse, that they've developed different parts.
And Dr. Pam, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second, because we spoke about this the last time you were on. We spoke about this with Yudi, who was on our last segment last month here, the pandemic. I'm sure we've seen these cases spike up when you lock people in a house all together. I'm sure domestic abuse, child abuse spikes up greatly. So
that's really good insight, and that's so true.
Right, exactly. So, obviously, without going into any confidentiality here, was there a specific story or stories that you can explain, that where you've seen the trauma levels among families increase?
Absolutely. And I think I might just add that, is anyone who already has a history of trauma, which most of the people we have layers and layers, and what we call complex PTSD. They might have been abused as a child, as an adult, maybe in different ways. So there's layers that we have to, it's almost like peeling back layers on an onion. You start on the outside, which might present, like I said, with anxiety or depression, and then you kind of move in towards the other stuff. But I want to tell a short story. I have this woman whom I've probably been working with her a little more than a year now, and I won't, of course, mention her name, but she's a woman in her 50s who had horrific child sexual abuse by multiple members of her family, and her father was alcoholic, but the one person in her family she felt loved by. Her mother was very dismissive of her and abusive of her physically and emotionally. And then she, not surprisingly, married an alcoholic and went through years of domestic violence and emotional abuse with him. And she then, and again, not surprisingly, ended up having sexual harassment at her job, a very high-level job in New York City. And one day, she thought she wanted to jump off the subway platform. This is a couple years ago in the spring, about 2 years ago now. And she literally had a breakdown. She just collapsed. She caught herself. Thankfully, she had enough ability to hold herself, but she knew right then. She got herself to the ER at a local hospital in the city. She lives here in Jersey. But that started her journey of healing. And then when she got out of the hospital, she came to me. And she's just a remarkable, wonderful, caring woman who is very artistic, has a lot of strengths, but we've worked through all kinds of issues, and we are still working on issues. We've worked through self-harm, where she hits herself in the head when she feels guilty. We've worked through helping her to separate from her husband. We've worked through her trauma of the death of her father, and also now dealing with an elderly mother whom she has to take care of, even though the mother abused her, which is a very tricky dynamic. So she's an amazing woman, and I always say to her in every session, you're moving from, you've now no longer a victim now, but now you're a survivor, and I want to get you over here to be a thriver. So you go from victim to survivor to thriver. Victim to survivor to thriver. And I always say to her at the end of every session, and I know you can't always take that in right now, but I'm going to hold out hope for you that you're going to heal.
Dr. Pam, that is unbelievable. I mean, and for the audience at home, I mean, Yudi brought up a very, very good point last month when she was like, the first step is seeking help, making that decision.
And that's a huge step.
And the most important step. I mean, so for anybody watching at home, I think it's important that you let them know that you are here. Where could people find more information about you, the type of services you provide, especially the trauma services, because I feel that people are just, hesitant to ask for the type of help.
It's so scary because, I mean, I think the fear with trauma too is it's right. It's like having surgery. I always say you do worse for a while, but then eventually you heal because it opens all that up. But people can find us at www.hudsonrivercarecounseling.com, and I am really full, but I'm not to say that to discourage you, but I hope you can see that we have a passion for the work we do. We want to help, and we're here for you. We now are in the middle of training some people to continue doing the trauma work. We really believe in it that strongly. And yes, all these events of the last few years between the violence and even the Ukraine situation, now more racial violence recently, and of course the quarantine people are just on edge and need help on top of their own stuff.
Yeah, well, Dr. Pam, we really, really appreciate your time today. As you could see, she's very busy, but she made time for us. So, and for the
I'm honored that you had me.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no, we're honored to have you, and thank you so much for sharing that one story. I mean, it just must be so difficult for that specific person.
Oh, yes.
But it's also great that you have the people out there have a place to come, either to come see Dr. Pam or one of her many diverse staff members here at Hudson River Care Counseling. Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we will be right back. Peter Biancamano back with you. Don't forget to watch us on cable access every Sunday and Monday at 9 a.m. Optimum Channel 18, Files Channel 46, and Comcast Channel 190. Also on Sunday mornings at 9:30 a.m., you can watch our show on our YouTube channel, and you can also binge watch all of our old shows. Who doesn't want to keep watching The Pulse with Peter B? We'll see you there.
Hi, my name is Frank Rosner, as you all know, and I'm guest hosting for Peter B on The Pulse, and my guest, as always, is Joshua Sotomayor Einstein. By the way, I figured it out finally.
Here he goes again, folks.
E equals MC squared means Einstein equals mass convolutedness squared.
Well, with friends like you, Frank, I don't think I need any enemies.
Well, I think you have plenty of them, but that's all right.
That is true.
So, Josh, tell me, what do you think we should talk about today? There's a couple of things that we could bring up.
You lead, and I will explain to the audience why you're wrong.
Very well. Well, I don't think you can really say that I'm wrong. There was a budget passed recently, as you may well know. It also includes $176 million allocated to the redevelopment of the Hudson rail yards there, or the bus terminal and that whole section there.
It also has trains. Don't forget
trains.
trains.
the trains, the whole thing. And I think that's a very good thing. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, as unusual, you started out with a couple of things that are uncontestable because they are actually facts, and I'd like the viewers out there to take note. In a moment of silence, he said 2 facts, and the first time ever. But then you followed up with a normal, usual Bubba Misa for all you non-Yiddish speakers out there. That means nonsense. It's not a good thing. The State Department or any element of our government shouldn't be involved in real estate, and NJ Transit, is about transit. It's not supposed to be a real estate development company. I don't oppose it because, as many people do, of overcrowding issues. Any urban area is going to have that, although a lot of people in town are against it because of density issues. I do oppose it because, if it's running trains or buses and that's the role of the state, that's fine, but it shouldn't be a landlord, it shouldn't be a developer, it shouldn't be in bed with private business. And all the things that you support and you're talking about will end up in that situation.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with you. I mean, you might have stated some facts in there. However, it's a compendium of compendium, whatever. It's LCOR, which is the developer. It's the state, it's New Jersey Transit, and it's Hoboken.
Well,
as far as I know.
It's NJ Transit's property.
Well,
and they've they contracted out to a developer.
Right.
But nonetheless,
LCOR.
it's the people's property being pimped out to developers, which I'm not okay with.
Pimped out to developers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you then, honestly.
Well, the state is a prostitute. Let's be honest. Our politicians and our institutions are for sale, even in New Jersey.
I wouldn't call them that, not at all. I think our politicians did a good thing this time. The budget looks good, and there's also a provision in that budget, and as far as what's being redeveloped at the trains and the station, there's going to be a 20% set aside for affordable housing. Far more than we've ever expected.
Well, as usual, you're conflating 2 issues. You keep on bringing up the budget, and then you switch back to the NJ Transit development of the train station, the Lackawanna station in Hoboken. And those 2 things, those 2
I have
things
to defend
are very
myself.
different.
I have to defend myself.
Twice now, you've mentioned them in relation to each other. When one is being done, the development is being done by a state agency and has literally little to nothing to do with the people of Hoboken in terms of our having a say and City Hall having a say. And the other is the people's representatives, the representatives of the people of Hoboken voting on a budget that doesn't take into consideration that inflation, the revised inflation numbers for June are minimum 9.1%. We all know that they changed the CPI and the methodology that they do that in the 80s to try to pad the papers and lie to the American public. So we know inflation is higher. We know we're going into hard economic times, and we know New Jersey is hemorrhaging jobs and plenty of people are moving out as the cost of living increases. But what does our City Hall do? Does it try to cut spending? No, it doesn't. It says tough noogies. It says to the working people of Hoboken, especially the working class, if you don't like it, you can get out of here. That's not okay.
I got a new word for Josh. He's just a nudge. I tell you, I don't agree with you, and it is part of the same thing, actually, because the
budget.
What
thing? No one knows what they're talking about.
No, it's in the budget, and there's a 20% set aside for affordable housing.
Oh, you're talking about the budget for. You're talking about the plans for the development.
The 176 million is in the budget. It's already been ascribed.
You're talking about the state budget.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
So it's one and the same to me.
I apologize for you being unclear.
Wow. He apologized for me being unclear. Have
Ladies
you
and
ever known
gentlemen,
him to be clear?
Did you think he was talking about the municipal budget? Because that's also something that happened recently.
Well,
and that's also, it seemed like that's what he was talking about.
We
As
should
usual,
put out a vote. We should put out a vote. You
A
know,
vote on what?
well, was Frank clear or was he not clear?
Oh, I don't think you want to see the results.
Absolutely. I don't mind to see bad results. If I wasn't clear, it's fine. If I was clear, you'll know that I was.
All right. So if you were clear, please call Frank's phone number at. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Wow, what a nudge. I don't understand how he can be affiliated with Einstein in any way whatsoever.
That 2-bit hack from Germany, all right, has nothing on me, all right? Nothing on my family,
That's all right. It's expected now. I'm
You
going to
limit
try to
us to
figure out
the
every
speed
time.
of light, okay? I've seen you eat faster. I've seen you eat food faster than the speed of light.
Well, I'm going on a diet, by the way, folks. This is a good place to announce it as any. So as you see me in the coming weeks, months, whatever, I'm going to be as skinny as possible.
Well, as you
How's
lose
that,
it,
Jack?
I will find it.
Well, there you go. It's got to go somewhere, so it might as well go to you.
Anyway, but getting back on track, let's
Yes,
talk
sir.
about what I thought you were talking about before with the municipal budget.
Well-
do you have any comments, questions, concerns about that issue?
No, not really. I think it's a sound budget. Taxes aren't going up. The county helped.
Well,
It's
overall,
stable.
taxes aren't going up.
No, but it's stable. Considering the economic situation we're in, I believe it's relatively stable. It's a good thing.
So everybody else in the regular world, especially in the working class,
The
has
regular
had to tighten their budget, spend a little bit less money. All right, but City Hall should keep on spending like a drunken sailor.
All right, I think
That's Frank's analysis.
We should
right
go
there.
on another topic now
That's
because we're not going to
juvenile,
agree on this at all.
infantile.
We're
and
not
just-
going to agree on this at all.
I mean, is the Ball administration paying you?
Not at all.
Well, they should.
Well, they should. Well, there you go. It's just my opinion, folks. You can do and go and have an opinion as you please. You know that. One other thing I do want to bring up is I want to bring up painted lines for parking throughout Hoboken. I've noticed that when you're in the elite section of Hoboken, they have lines for the cars so that there's enough space for everybody to park. I know we have them on Washington for the backing in, but from, I think, 8th Street on the blocks, Adams, Garden, Bloomfield, and even going up to Hudson, there are no lines to indicate where a car can park within those lines. It would free up so much parking space because at this point the city has made the streets unnavigable.
Well, listen,
almost.
if we want to talk
So-
about streets and we want to talk about safety and we want to talk about common sense, our city hall just recently lowered the speed limit across the town from 25 to 20.
Right.
And the reality is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter not because it's not a good idea. Maybe it's a good idea. Maybe it's a bad idea. It doesn't matter because there's absolutely zero enforcement. There's zero enforcement when it comes to electric mopeds or electric bicycles going through red lights. There's zero enforcement on our side streets when it comes to drivers rolling through stop signs. We need more police out on the street, driving around and on foot patrol, giving people tickets for when they actually engage in traffic violations, whether they're on a bicycle, a moped, or an automobile.
Well,
There's no excuse for it.
I
And
don't
City Hall has left the people of Hoboken, down. They talk about vision zero. It's really zero vision.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that. We're going to have to stop it at that point because I'm going to have to turn it over to the to the host that is the best ever, Peter B. from The Pulse.
Wow, a big thank you to my very good friend Frank Rosner for calling me the best. Frank, you're the best, buddy. I really, really appreciate that. And we can both agree that Josh Sotomayor Einstein, with that new hat he was wearing today, that he definitely picked up off the street from a homeless person, is the worst. And Frank, don't you worry. You were clear to me in the last segment, and I will be voting yes that you were clear in that poll once we put it up. Anyway, folks, this was a very, very fun episode. Join us next week for The Pulse on everything you need to know. I'm Peter Biancamano. I hope you have a great week, everybody.